And so let's give a huge round of welcome to Vaibhav for easy answers for enterprise AI at scale. Vaibhav is the CEO of AppOrchid.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys can hear me okay. All right. So welcome back from lunch, and really do appreciate you making it back to this room after everything that's going on. So let's get to it. We are running late, and I have a lot to cover. So let's keep this interesting a little bit for a second. Let's move away from all the technology and everything else. I have a question for you. And I don't need an answer right now. I just need you to think through it. And we'll come, if I have the time, I'll come back to what this is about. But do you know who this person is? Just raise your hand if you do. One hand, two hands. OK. We'll come back to it and see why he is relevant at all to our discussion today. So let me get on with my topic. Just perspective, I think you guys met me yesterday. But the only thing that's really relevant here from my background is three things, right? One, I've spent my life in the enterprise software space. And for 20 years of my career in the beginning, I have seen enterprise software wreak havoc on businesses or make them spectacularly successful, either which way, depending on the success. And I've seen it from a programmer standpoint, and I've seen it as an executive sponsor standpoint. The last 7, 8 years of my career, we've been deploying capital in very innovative early-stage startups. We have deployed over $150 million across 45 different startups. And why that's relevant is because on a day-to-day basis, we need to make these judgment calls on which innovation will be successful, which will be not. And to invest in 45 softwares, we had probably looked at 800 to 1,000 different companies, right? And most relevant for today's discussion is, for the last 2 years, I've been running a startup. So the tables have turned on me, and all the people I used to give advice to, now I need to take advice from when I ask them for money. So I've seen that life. And I know Ash loves theory of constraints. You want to know about constraints, be a startup CEO. And you really want to know theory of constraints, be a startup CEO of a product company. So with that, let's get to the point. One request I have from you, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions, and I'll bet my month's salary on this, is the moment I start talking about the solution, 90% of the people in this company are going to try to figure out, how are you doing this? How is the data model? What are the APIs? What's the ML model? I don't want you to do that. All those questions are very important, but I think the 30 minutes that we have, I think we can answer better questions. We should answer, what can we do differently, and why are we doing this in the first place? So I hope when I have the question-answer session after this, the questions are more along those lines than what we're doing, because everything on the how part has been covered, I can assure you. Okay? So that is very pertinent to why does AppOrchid exist? Why does the world need another AI ML company, right? And this is why. AI is the most hyped technology that is out there. And with ChatGPT, it's been pulled out of that trough of disillusionment back into the hype cycle now, right? And the reason there's a hype cycle is this statistic from McKinsey. 10% of the companies have not tried AI at all. And only 10% of the companies have actually successfully deployed it at scale. What does that mean? That means 80% of the companies are playing around with AI. They are in that pilot chasm or pilot hell, whatever you want to call it. And so there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of understanding or misunderstanding about it, but no value. And this is the problem that we're essentially trying to solve within the context of solutions that we are bringing to the market, right? So how do we do that? And this is the most basic premise of an AI solution, right? That there exists enough data that you can drive predictions and insights from that, right? And yet, and I talked to a customer a day. I was telling Kinesh that yesterday. A day. And I haven't met one COO, one CFO, one CMO who has said, I want an answer of how this storm is going to impact my transformers, or I want to know which contracts are risky for me. And when I ask that question, I have to go to my BI team, wait for 3 weeks, sometimes 3 months, and get an answer that is now obsolete, right? So that's the promise, that's the fundamental promise of AI, and that has not been delivered. So we are trying to solve that problem, right? So why in the world would we be able to solve the problem when everybody else is trying to do that? And I'll get to that. So we talked ad nauseum about ChatGPT. And what it has done for us has been tremendous. Because we've been trying to tell this to our customers, saying you can just ask a question to your data and get an answer. And that concept wasn't resonating. Now I go and say, do you want a ChatGPT for your enterprise? And they say, yeah, I'll talk to you, right? And then the next question is, why can't I just use ChatGPT? And I start with this slide. I say, I'll write a rap about Axion Labs, and it's created a phenomenal rap, and I'm not a performer, so I'm not going to do the rap song for you guys. But if that's the problem you want to solve, ChatGPT will solve for you. That is not the problem the enterprises want to solve. An enterprise wants to know, how is my consumption going to happen on my grid for the next 3 months so I can balance my load? Where is my customer churn coming from so I can figure out how to mitigate that? ChatGPT is not going to do it for you. And they're not programmed to do it for you, as we've all learned. So we are solving that problem. We are saying that you have data. You can interrogate that data, and you can get answers. And what is more important is these will be accurate answers. What is even more important, that these answers will be hyper-personalized and hyper-contextualized. What does that mean? It means that the dashboard that you're seeing here is not a pre-canned dashboard that is filtered and showed to you. It is a dashboard that is built on real time. And it's built based on the question you asked, the type of data that we got as a result of that question you asked, and the system determining what is the most relevant information to show you and what is the best way to curate it. Right? So that's happening in real time after you ask the question. We're not stopping there. We're saying, we know your data. We've been sitting on it. We look at it every day. What insights can we derive from that data that we can push to you and give you information that you didn't even ask for? Because maybe it might be useful for you. And not only that, we talked yesterday about UI and everything else. We are saying, how can we get your feedback to understand what's relevant to you or not, and be able to personalize that to you on a continuous basis? So that's what we're doing. And in interest of time, I'm going to skip the whole technology aspect of it and just show you the product in action, because nothing kind of says it like you see it. So it's a quick less than 3-minute video. I request you to watch carefully because the font is small. So thank you. So that was a quick preview of how the solution works, because you got to see it in action. And there are a few takeaways from it, right? We are addressing data that is internal to your organization. We are addressing storm data from NOAA, which is external to your organization. We are addressing structured data that is in your systems of record. We are addressing unstructured data that is in documents. And we're bringing as much of data to bear to give you as good an information and a complete picture that you want. And we're doing it cross domains, right? So the beauty of this is we can go deep and say we'll solve a Marcom problem for you or a supply chain issue for you. No, we built a general purpose thing that will go across the domains and address it for you, right? So the question is, the customer is never looking for a point problem. They want a solution, right? So great. You answered a question for me. You gave me an insight. What am I supposed to do with it? That's not solving a problem. A bulb went on, but I'm not solved any problems, right? So it's not good enough to stop with that, right? That's just the beginning. So the question is, what can we do from those insights? And so we provide pathways, and this is learnings that I'm just sharing with you because we had to build all of this stuff, and Axion helped us do that, you take those insights and make them actionable apps. You take those insights and you share them across your organization because somebody else might derive a different inference from it than you are deriving and choose to follow a different action from your it. And not only that, now become aware that the more data you give to the system, the better insights you would be and more complicated questions you can answer. And so our platform enables you to start with customer, for example, or an asset with example, or a contract with example, and then keep adding to it. And the more you add to it, the more smarter the system is. And it'll give you an insight about your contract when you ask about a customer question if that data exists, right? So that is the beauty of it. So insights are good. Results are better. In fact, results are the only thing that matter, right? So we want to kind of walk you through that journey with our customers a little bit. So good to know about your customer insights, but can you stop them from calling you and complaining? Can I reduce the call center volume by 50%? That's an impact. Kinesh talked about actions and impact. That's the impact, right? That's what you want to measure. Can I prioritize? We have a customer who says, I have 5,000 transformers. I can only replace 500 of them a year. Which 500 should I replace? That's the question to answer, right? So I'm just going to give you some examples with BP. For example, we gave them phenomenal contract insights. We said, oh, where is your, what kind of things you negotiate, et cetera. They're saying, but it takes 90 days for me to negotiate a standard software services agreement. And we said, well, we have all these insights for you. And now they negotiate it in 8 days, 87% reduction. And why are they able to do it? Because, and I'll give you a simple example, we showed them, for example, here are the 20 clauses you negotiate the most. As an example, and I'm making this up, these are not real BP numbers. You take and ask for a commercial liability insurance of $10 million, and you end up negotiating it down to $5 million 90% of the time. What's the point of going through that negotiation cycle? Why wouldn't you get both parties visibility to that information, and they can pick? That's how you reduce. We call it the no red line thing. We have a solution that's enabling carriers get their loads better, and so on and so forth. And in interest of time, I'm not going to give you, but this one example I'll give you. This is the solution. We've developed 28 such impactful apps with Axion's help for one of the largest water utility, not one of the largest water utility in the US, right? So that's the impact we're having. And I won't go through all these examples. I'll just show these logos to you. And the only reason I'm showing these logos to you is because you recognize them. These are people with options. They can buy any technology they want, and the problems they want to solve are not trivial. Yet, we are able to go and make an impact for those guys, which tells us that if you're solving a real problem, the world is your oyster. There's no limitation, right? So let's come back to the point of this presentation in the beginning. That's who he is. How many of you know, now that I tell you who Nick Saban is, do you know who Nick Saban is? No. He is the most successful college football coach in the US. And for those of you who don't follow college football, let me just tell you it's a huge, huge deal. And why is he relevant to innovations? I was listening to his interview a few years ago, and this part has been stuck in my head. Alabama had lost one of the most important games that they were supposed to win. And Nick Saban was being interviewed. And he said, and they were just asking him a whole bunch of things and all of that. And he said, look, here's the bottom line. Here's what we do after every game. We go into the locker room, I get all my players, and I ask them 2 questions. After every game, win or lose, I ask them, so what? And now what? And that's the most important thing. So when we are looking at innovations, when we are looking at every time somebody comes to me with an idea, we apply that theory. We say, so what? Now what? And we've talked about impact. We talked about technology as an enabler. But the process that connects the two is this process of so what, now what. You got to embed that in your thought process from an innovation standpoint to make it a sustainable factory of innovations versus having a one-off wonder hit. So with that, I'm going to stop.
Thanks, Vaibhav.
Do we have questions?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So So how are natural language questions converted to queries?
The first question is a how, right? I think we have a framework. I think it's based off of CalSite, which is converting those. And we have a whole framework of an ontology and managed semantic objects and stuff like that. And I'm happy to discuss that with you. And I probably only have 20% of the answers, and my team can answer that for you. Maybe some Axion folks can answer that for you. But it's a framework that we have that converts the first layer. But really, that's a trivial problem to solve, folks. That is not where you want to focus on when you look at this solution.
Thanks, Vaibhav. So this entire session was on enterprise AI, but looks like lots of us want to understand what is enterprise AI.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is 200 answers for the 200 people here. My world of it is, how are you deploying AI to solve a problem for a business enterprise? Where in the business process, whether it's order to cash, procure to pay, plan to make, doesn't matter, how is predictive algorithms being implemented to improve that process, whichever process it is? That's how I look at it.
Thanks, Vaibhav. So next question is, wouldn't getting real-time data and building AI without guardrails defeat the very purpose for which we have invested in having it in the first place?
Okay, so if I understand the question, you're saying if we do this in real time, we shouldn't be storing data? Is that the question? I'll just go with that as my understanding of the question. But yes, and what's wrong with that, first of all? Secondly, I'll just tell you, we actually have a portfolio company called Worlds.io based out of Austin, and that's what they do. They are creating a digital twin of a warehouse, of a manufacturing facility, of a pharmaceutical sorting facility, and replicating live stream data to impact actions as they happen in real time to stop failures or improve quality. That's what's coming. So yeah, I think that's happening, whether we like it or not.
Sure. So since you answered yes, so what are some of the guardrails by which we can control costs and yet show value?
Yeah, I think you have to. I don't think there's an element of controlling costs. It's the question is, can you generate enough value? And if you're not generating enough value, then you shouldn't be spending that money. So I would look at it the other way. Am I impacting enough in terms of my quality control? And is the cost I'm saving from that improvement more than what I'm spending on it? That's how I would look at it.
Okay. On the source data, does source data need to be normalized in any way?
Yeah, it needs to be. Actually, it's funny. We've seen it both ways. We need to normalize it, but in a lot of cases, we denormalize it because we want a more contextual view of it. And we are not replicating data. We are storing metadata in a different format, so we can always go to the source data for the details that we need. So we're not replicating in data. And when we do the metadata, we actually denormalize it in a lot of cases because we want a different view of it.
Okay. So based on how you defined hyper-personalization, how do we know what kind of data visualization will work for a particular person?
Two elements to it. There's best practices that we have baked into the platform to determine when a certain type of data is, some things are obvious. If it's spatial data, you show it on a map. If it's temporal data, you show it on a timeline. That's basic. But the platform, what it does is you actually have a Netflix kind of an interface to it. You can say, I like this, I don't like this. You can provide annotations and tell them what you like, don't like. You can comment on the data. So it is what we call a continuous learning environment. And based on your prior preferences, the system's actually continuously personalizing it. That's the hyper-personalization aspect of it. It's not only based on your role and security, but it also is considering your preferences, which is important, again, from an adoption standpoint.
So, so if you have to compare all of these with the legacy business intelligence tools like Click, Tableau, Flex, so how would we compare it against?
Yeah, very good question. So let's take Tableau as an example. I actually have a customer who I'm talking to, and the first thing when he saw the solution, he says, can I just get rid of all my Tableau licenses? And I said, sure, you can. Because the problem he has is not with the Tableau software. He's saying he has the same problem. He says, I need to go to my BI people, tell them the new question that I have, and then they take 3 weeks to build that dashboard, and now that dashboard is available. 3 weeks have gone past, and I might have a new question now, and the cycle continues. That's the problem we're solving. Fundamentally, the BI solution has always been about give me the universe of all the questions you're going to answer, and then I'll build the data model that supports it, and then I'll build the UI that caters to it. We're flipping that. We're saying, no, the data has all the stuff you want. Ultimately, unless it had it, you're not going to be able to serve it up in the first place. So why don't we flip it and automate the entire process in between? That's the fundamental difference.
Thanks, Vaibhav. So I think we had these many questions. I'm sure definitely everyone is going to reach out to you later.
Perfect. And since I did finish earlier, I just want to use 30 seconds to say this. So Axion and AppOrchid have been together for, I don't know, 8 years. It actually predates my thing with Axion. So when I first met with Axion, I actually met with Kinesh, and it was in less than ideal circumstances. And what stuck with me is that I'm talking to a real partner here. And it's been that kind of a relationship. So I just want to point that out to you. And we've been through a lot of ups and downs together, but it's always been the partnership thing. And I was mentioning this to Kinesh yesterday. And that was my only interaction with Axion until I met Sat and Jyotika and everybody else. And then when I see this room full of Axion people, and how do I see that is not just his ethos, but that's the ethos of the organization. So I genuinely want to thank you guys for that. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Vaibhav.
Thank you.